Hello friends, my name is Kaysha, and I'm a proud member of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. I'm also a survivor of human trafficking. My trafficking began in Canada and crossed into the United States. I was stalked, hunted, and ignored by the very systems that were meant to protect me. This is why, with my father, Dale Richardson, we started the CARES Project, an Indigenous survivor-led movement for humanity. We are dedicated to exposing human trafficking, government corruption, and holding institutions accountable. The judicial branch is broken. It has failed to restrain the evils that have come upon this republic. Whether it's family court failures, weaponization of the judiciary, COVID-era harms, or human trafficking, the courts have allowed these issues to continue unchecked for too long. One of the most powerful tools we're using is the petition for redress of grievances. These are lawful constitutional actions rooted in the founding principles of this country. On May 19, 2026, a formal petition for redress of grievances was submitted to the United States Congress. This petition is demanding that Congress and the President use the powers under Article 4, Section 4 to preserve this Republican form of government by restraining these abuses pending congressional investigation. Through the CARES Project Action Plan, we are mobilizing people across the United States to strengthen this effort. This petition has been created as a template. If you or someone you love have been hurt by these same systemic failures in the courts or by government institutions, your evidence matters. When you come forward, please bring your evidence along with a copy of the petition for redress of grievances. This helps connect your story to this growing constitutional record being placed before Congress. We are asking you to stand with us. Join the CARES Project Action Plan and help us build a precedent that demands accountability and protects the God-given rights of American families. Our united voices will compel Congress to uphold the Constitution and safeguard our liberties. United we stand, one nation under God. I will close with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CARES Project podcast. Today we have with us Detective Helen Grus and her lawyer, Bath Sheba Vandenberg, and obviously my daughter, the host, to talk about what has been going on. So if you guys can just introduce yourself to our audience. You want to start, Helen?
Sure. I'm Helen Grus. I'm on the personal front. I'm a mother. I'm a community member. I'm a daughter, sister. And at work, I'm a police officer with the Ottawa Police Service. I've been in investigations for since 2007. And I'm currently employed as a detective in the Ottawa Police Robbery Unit.
All right. And Bath Sheba, you want to introduce yourselves to our audience, please?
Hi, good morning. So I'm Detective Helen Grus, lawyer, and I live in Alberta, but I practice law both in Alberta and Ontario.
Okay.
Thank you for interviewing us this morning and allowing an opportunity to share this important story.
Yes. And so, kind of a little background, you were investigating during the pandemic response about some of the issues with the miscarriages and so forth. Is that correct?
So I'll go back a little because it wasn't an investigation at that time. It was very probative. So it was January 2022. Yeah. January 2022, there was a colleague came to me with concerns that there was a tripling of unexpected baby deaths. And January 13th, a few days later, I went into our police systems, to see if that's true or not, because I was going into a town hall meeting with our chief of police. When I accessed the records, looked in there, I did see that, in fact, there had been a tripling over years past for 2021. And I brought that concern to the chief of police, saying, I'm not sure exactly what it is. However, we do have to keep in mind that the only variable in 2021 is the rollout of the mRNA vaccinations. But I was clear to say that I was not at liberty to make any conclusions. Sudden death investigations can take, well, they do always take minimum of several months, up to some years.
Okay, so you wanted to investigate because you saw something that was looking out of the ordinary. And isn't that standard procedure to kind of start looking into something when you see something like that?
Exactly. If we see something that's off, that's our job. That's our duty to look further, to ask questions as to what's going on. Why is there a doubling, tripling of infant deaths? And above that, there were also 2 babies in those deaths that happened that I had looked at. There were 2 infants that had died. They were sent home healthy with their families. Parents picked them up to feed them, and they collapsed, went limp, and died in their parents' arms. Something I had never seen in my 19 years of policing at the time. So not only was there a steep increase, there was also the method in how 2 of the babies had died was something drastically different.
Okay, so when you started to collect information and start to look into this, how long did you do this before you started to get people asking questions and so forth to what you were doing within your work?
So I ran the stats. Yeah, I ran the stats on January 13th, 2022, and within hours I reported to the chief of police, and by February 4th I was suspended. So that's within weeks.
Wow. What was the reason that they gave you that they said they were going to suspend you?
The allegations were that I was accessing the police records, the RMS records, for personal reasons, and that I had been printing off coroner reports. Both of those allegations are absolutely not true. It was not for personal reasons. Personal reasons would be for personal gain.
Yes.
There's no gain for me. Actually, the gain is to try to help these families get answers as to why their little babies died.
So when they came in and they asked you and the things that you did, these normal things that you would normally do if you were going to start looking into a matter at for potential crimes?
Doing these kind of probative queries in our records management system is common daily policing. We do that. All police officers who actually do their jobs do that. They go into our system because that's where intelligence is. That's where we put our findings. So even to this day, I was suspended for 9 months, brought back into the Ottawa Police Robbery Unit, where I still conduct probative queries on a daily basis in my investigations.
So you got suspended for something that is pretty much a standard everyday occurrence in your job.
Well, I was suspended for the allegations that were put forth, but they were rumors. So unfortunately, I was suspended on rumors from some colleagues. And that all came forward in the tribunal during their testimony.
What were the rumors, if you can speak on it, since it's on public record?
Yeah, those rumors were actually published then. Somebody leaked this information in March of 2022 to the CBC. They leaked information of this internal investigation to the CBC, which published an article. And those rumors, really, they're written out there in those articles, calling me an anti-vaxxer, an anti-masker, that I've gone rogue, and that I had been contacting all the families, contacting all the coroners. The inaccurate, I don't want to go that hard, but it was all inaccurate in these articles. But those are the rumors that clearly were then floating around about me within the unit.
And so did they ever find out who leaked it out to the CBC or no?
They refused to investigate that.
Why not?
That's actually that's an internal breach of policy, and it's a breach of trust. So, but no, that was addressed in the tribunal, that I asked for it to be investigated, who leaked that information to the CBC, and I got an email being sent back to me citing that they will not be investigating that.
Okay, so you get suspended. Then what happens after they suspend you?
So the suspension, actually, I used that time to read all the open source documents available. I went into the Public Health Agency of Canada um, site, which is open for all anybody who's interested to glean records from that, and the copies. What they do post as far as some of the contractual agreements, not the contracts themselves, but the essential information from the contracts that were entered between the government of Canada and Pfizer. So I used my suspension to research what I could online. And back then the order came down from the court in Texas, from Pittman, where Pfizer was ordered to release their data information. So I obtained a copy of the Pfizer 5.3.6 document where it shows that during the clinical trials of the Pfizer vaccine, it had never been tested on pregnant or breastfeeding women. That is in the contracts that the Canadian government has in their records. That's in Pfizer's own contracts. They disclosed that to the Canadian government. So they knew that these vaccines had never been tested on pregnant breastfeeding women. In that document 5.3.6, when you read on further in there, it explains that during the clinical trials, the mothers that became pregnant during those trials, their babies died. They were either stillborn, miscarried, born with deformities and died. One baby of 33 had a normal outcome. One baby survived with a normal. And then they stopped following these women that got pregnant during the trials. Further to that, there's 9 pages of adverse effects that they call them adverse events to be cautious of if you take the mRNA vaccine. So that's all in those documents. When I read that and when I saw those 9 pages of everything from neurological issues to heart issues to, you have to read them for yourself. You may have already. I don't want to guess there, but it's extensive how many possible side effects are in result of these vaccinations.
Yes, I actually read a lot of it, looked at the patents and so forth as well. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, so during my suspension, that's what I did. And then I had, as the OPS internal investigation continued, I was called in for a compelled interview, a statement on May the 12th, 2022. So by that time, I had compiled a lot of this information I had gathered. It was 10 binders full, and these are big binders. And that included the affidavit of Dr. Byron Bridle, one of our top virologists. He had prepared an affidavit for the TTC lawsuit back in 2021. And it also contained the Pfizer records, peer-reviewed studies, and also evidence showing that the government of Canada or different public health officials, it includes excerpts from their Twitter pages, from their social media posts where they're telling pregnant and breastfeeding mothers that the vaccines are safe and effective. So when I came into that interview, I showed the lead investigator saying what happened in January, like the reason for the RMS query was simply to see if it's true, if there's a doubling or tripling of baby deaths. But here, as I sat home during suspension, I started reading, and here now we do have evidence that there should be an investigation into criminal negligence, because here we have evidence of people posting, high officials posting that vaccines are safe and effective, yet Pfizer's own documents say they've never been tested on pregnant breastfeeding women. And in fact, the data shows that there were great injuries and death caused. And so that was May 12th, 2022. And July 2022, 26, I believe, I forget the exact date, I was actually formally charged, and not for insubordination. The initial investigation was for insubordination. So if I breach policy, if an officer breaches policy, for example, using RMS for personal reasons, they would be charged under insubordination. I was not charged with that. In fact, that allegation had been withdrawn, not closed without sufficient evidence, because the lead investigator acknowledged that my concerns were legitimate, that I, in fact, was doing police work when I went to confirm whether or not we had a doubling, tripling of baby deaths, and that I was concerned that 2 babies died in their parents' arms. So on one hand, I've been exonerated from the allegations that I was using RMS for these reasons. On the other hand, they flipped this charge around, and now they've charged me. They charged me and found me guilty of discreditable conduct.
Which was what?
They brought in back the RMS searches, claiming I was using RMS to initiate an unauthorized project, and that I had interfered in an investigation. Because if I backtrack back to January 2022, I found out that from these two babies that went limp and died in their parents' arms, one of the babies had an enlarged heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I had called the detective in charge of that file, asking him. I said, it was January 18th, 2022. I called, said, do you know if the mother had the COVID vaccination shot? That detective did not know, and he dismissed my concerns. And after we hung, instead of following up with the coroner or calling the parents himself, he went and reported me to my supervisor as asking, trying to make some linkage. I don't know what he told my supervisor other than reporting me that I had this question. And seeing that he hadn't reached out to the family of the coroner, I picked up the phone on January 30th and I called the family, because it's a question that needs to be answered. In every police investigation there's many questions that have to be asked when a sudden death occurs. Specifically, when it's a child under 5, we have what's known as a SUDI questionnaire, a Sudden Unexplained Death in Infant questionnaire. There's over 100 questions on there, detailed questions ranging from what was the baby wearing, where were they sleeping, how were they sleeping, belly, back, side, what did the baby eat, what did the mother eat, did you give any medications to the baby, did you take any medications as the mother, are you breastfeeding? So we can go on. They're very detailed questions, but there's a portion that includes the medical information. So is the mother on prescribed medication? Is she taking illicit drugs? Is she drinking alcohol? Has she taken any recent vaccinations? Those questions under policy must be asked. So by my calling that father January 30th, 2022, and asking that question, it's a question that should have been asked. I asked it. I got an answer. And we had a very short cordial conversation. This father never complained. This father was appreciative of the call, and it was short and cordial, and it ended at that. Nobody knew until I told Professional Standards on May 12th, 2022, that I called that father. That's how they found out, because I was honest. I have nothing to hide here.
And so they punished you for asking questions on something that would be related to finding out if there's something to go ahead and start a criminal investigation. Sound about right?
Yes. Essentially, those investigations, some of them were poorly concluded. One of them was concluded without even autopsy results being submitted. So I had concerns, and I raised them with the Professional Standards when I had my appointment with them. And so at that point, they actually said, oh, so you were doing quality control. And I said, no, I wasn't doing quality control. I've been an investigator since 2007. So as soon as I opened these investigations up on January 13th, 2022, I could see which ones were done, which ones were thorough, and which ones were not. It's easy to just assess that. But at that time, because it's still early on in investigations, information does come in gradually. As I said, it can take up to 6 months, a year, or longer to get a complete investigation. But what concerned me was the one investigation that was closed within 24 hours of the baby dying. That's unheard of. The autopsy results were not included in there. So I raised these concerns, but that wasn't a project I was on. That's just an observation I had made.
Yes. No, I mean, I get it. I mean, and there needs to be more investigation thoroughly, obviously, into these things, which I agree. I mean, I went to the police in 2020 with respect to the engineering controls that were put out by the Public Health Agency of Canada. I went to the Battle for RCMP, and nothing was done with that, because if you give out, like, my background's mechanical engineering, I'm a technologist, and if you put out something incomplete, or put out missing information, someone could die. Like, I mean, in engineering, if something goes wrong, someone could die. And I was like, my thought, because I was dealing with the reopening procedures for dental clinics, I was like, my little daughter could die. So I'm like, something needs to be done. And things weren't done in that manner. But I saw a lot of, like, throughout the pandemic response, I saw a lot of things that went wrong. So when the vaccines came around, I was like, something is definitely wrong here. And everybody I talked to, regardless of their profession, they were saying that things were done outside of the ordinary in dealing with this. So I think that, I think from what I can hear you telling me, it seems that you're getting the same type of resistance for doing what normally would be your job in regards to this.
That's correct, yeah.
So when they made these, they brought these new charges against you. What happened as a result of that? Like, what was the process after they said, okay, we're going to charge you for this after you spoke to them? What did they do?
So I was cordial about it. We had our first appearance. So in this, as a police organization, we also have a police association. So I had a non-legal representative that I was put in touch with right from day one of the suspension. But a few weeks into it, I met with her, and she showed me, and it would be a plea deal, essentially saying, the service is willing to plead this out with you, and here's the statement of facts that they'd like you to plead to. So it's a one-sheet statement of facts that I reviewed, and there were about 13 bullets on it. And I looked at her after reading it. I said, if I sign this, then I will be discreditable because this document is inaccurate, it's misleading, and they couldn't even get my badge number right. So as an experienced investigator, it really threw me off because I thought this is not professional. Whoever put this document together, it's wrong. So I opted to challenge this because I believe I was doing my job. So once the tribunal, we had our first appearance, and I saw the way things were going. As an experienced officer, I've been in court many times, criminal court, provincial court, federal level. And immediately I realized after the first appearance there that this wasn't something I could handle on my own, that I would need proper counsel to represent me. And I was put in touch, by the grace of God, I was put in touch with Bath Sheba Vandenberg, who's been my counsel since.
All right. So, Bath Sheba, I just have some questions for you. So from what Helen was described from a legal perspective, can you kind of explain kind of what's going on? Because this doesn't seem like a standard procedure. So what's your take on this?
My take is that everything that's happened is unprecedented. One of the most famous words that we keep on hearing since 2020 is everything just seems unprecedented, a never before seen charge. As you rightly pointed out, that Detective Helen Grus, what she was doing, her job under the Police Service Act to protect the public. And she was simply at the probative stage. She wasn't even conducting a criminal negligence investigation. But, in a nutshell, I mean, she was basically had her badge stripped off her and suspended 2 weeks after flagging to the chief of police at that time that there's been a tripling in sudden infant deaths and that the only variable is the COVID-19 vaccination. I mean, she was silenced. And the message that the police are sending across Canada is that police officers should not be investigating any criminal negligence with regards to these COVID-19 vaccinations. And I must say that with regards to this particular case of pregnant and breastfeeding women, the case is very clear. It's very clear, right? Because as Helen was mentioning, that pregnant breastfeeding women were not part of the clinical trials. They were not specifically tested. And so on that leg alone, the government can't say that they're safe in the absence of data. But the government did have data. They did have information. They had information that if pregnant or breastfeeding women take this the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccination, that the baby is likely to die. That's the information they had, but they still said in May 2021 that it was safe for pregnant and breastfeeding women to take. And so it just, they're trying so hard to demonize Helen. It's I've never seen anything so astronomically, I would say, such an astronomical campaign to demonize a human being for doing the right thing, for standing up with integrity. And the longer this goes on, and the longer that they catch on that we are a resilient team and we're not backing down, the uglier it gets. And I just want to say that at the penalty hearing, we heard allegations coming from out of the prosecution's mouth that I have never heard before, that were just a total attack on the integrity and wonderful, warm character that Detective Grus had. The prosecution went so far as to saying that Detective Helen Grus, what she really was doing was looking for ways to avoid leave without pay. What about those babies? What about those moms and dads that lost their babies?
I agree. Like I said, when I go back to this, I think that they're not. I think it's very obvious that they're trying to make an example of you, Helen. And I was actually talking to some RCMP, and when I talked about some of the stuff that happened with me and my daughter, they straight out told me that it was political, and that they couldn't do it, and that they would love to do a lot of things, but they're being restricted from doing their jobs. They had their body cams on during this conversation as well. But I sit down and I look at this, and this is a political issue that they're trying to say that they shouldn't investigate because it's going against the wrong people. And what the law should apply to everyone equally. I don't care who you are. Like, I mean, we have a law for a reason. And if you don't have a law that can't be enforced, then it's just a suggestion. And that's really the whole point. And if they're restricting law enforcement from doing their job, that's a huge problem. And this is what this boils down to. Do you want to have law and order in your country, or do you not? Because if you prevent police officers from doing their job when they're doing the right thing, because if they're doing something wrong, by all means, stop them from doing wrong, because you don't want that to happen. But if they're doing their job, you have to let them do their job. It's simple as that.
Well, I think we're in a crisis of humanity. I think it's fundamentally a crisis of humanity because, from a legal point of view, of course, that's the forefront issue is this rule of law, a breakdown in the rule of law. The police officers are meant to be independent from any political influence from anybody in order to enforce the rule of law. And what we see in Detective Helen Grus' case is that, and it's clearly written in the ruling, that police officers are not allowed to investigate public health officials or government officials, municipal, provincial, or federal. That's what it says in the ruling. So I read that ruling, and my first reaction is, I'm not safe here in Canada. I'm just not safe, because the police force, which really fundamentally are incredibly important for our safety. Police officers are really important for our safety. And if they don't have their discretion to investigate, we're not safe. And so when we hear the word that there's political interference in policing, or that the police are being politically governed, I go a step further, and I say that we are in a crisis of humanity, that we are devaluing human life, our citizenry, right? We all pay taxes, we all participate to behave peacefully and kind with each other and respectful with each other. But our own money is being used to hurt us, to exploit us, to kill us even. I mean,
Yes.
we're being as some sort of economic gain. And there's a total lack of transparency and accountability. But it's going further than that. It's an affront to our fundamental freedoms, a freedom of expression, right? Because Detective Helen Grus was really using her freedom of expression as well as her police duties to say, hang on, there's an issue here, public health. safety issue here. And she was silent.
But like, I mean, people, we have to, if we, this, I'm sorry, this irritates me that this is actually happening. My sister used to work for the RCMP, and what she sees what's happening now with what's going on, she's like, I'm ashamed, because you're seeing so much interference with people doing their jobs. And so how is it, like, I mean, how has this impacted you, Helen, on having all of this restriction from doing something that you've been doing this for the last 23 years?
So, as I mentioned, like when I'm now in the robbery unit, it seems like it's been a surreal 4.5 years, because I'm still investigating, I'm still solving cases and some pretty significant swarmings and robberies around the city of Ottawa. So my policing, the techniques I use in investigations and everything, it actually hasn't changed from what I did do before. I'm just, right now, I was brought back October 2022 with restrictions that I was basically barred from going into SACA, returning there. And I was not allowed to touch any cases which involved sudden deaths or COVID, anything, ask about COVID vaccinations, talk about them. Like it's a list of restrictions that I received. And I don't know when the end date on that is, but essentially there's a part in there that even goes against what my duties as a police officer, because the way that's drafted, if somebody was to collapse and die in front of me, the way that those conditions and restrictions are drafted, it almost implies that I should just walk away. There's no way that I would ever do that. I would stop and help. That's my duty, but that's also the human side of I would like to think anybody, but we have seen that. We've seen so many people, whether it be in the civilian world, where they see people getting beat up or fighting and they turn and walk away, or they stop and record. So we really need to bring back the love and compassion for each other and to help each other out. So policing, I'm still there because I see hope. There's amazing officers out there that I interact with on a daily basis, whether it be within my unit, patrol officers, other investigators that are putting their life on the line for others and that are going out of their way to help. I like to think it's just unfortunately, it's just a small number of people that are influencing these kind of bad decisions that are being put out.
Well, there's just people in power that are influencing the decisions, that's the problem, because it seems to be a lot of top-down pressure. Most of the police officers I talk to, they're like, yeah, I agree. I want to do this, want to do the jobs, right? So why is this a problem to let this happen? This is beyond me, right?
Well, they see what's happening to me, right? We know that we have to, under our Police Services Act, we follow lawful orders. So if there is an unlawful order, it's actually our duty to challenge it as per now it's the Community Service Policing Act. But if it's an unlawful order coming from above, then we have an obligation to challenge it. However, the steps, all officers now can see what happens if you challenge something. And I wasn't even actually challenging an actual order at that time. I simply asked questions. I wasn't even challenging anything with these sudden death investigations. But they see that anybody who challenges will have to, unfortunately, go through the process of first being considered insubordinate, and then it goes through the tribunal. If they lose there, it goes up to the OPAC, and if you lose there, it goes up to the next appeal level court. So it is a process to challenge, and officers see that, and it does put a brake on how they perform their duties, I believe.
I think that was what it was intended to do. So, and if you want to just actually, if you want to just weigh in on this, what is your take on what they're doing here?
Well, their take is to crush police discretion and independence. The message is, as I said earlier, that government officials are above the law and that police standards are arbitrary. And ultimately, that people are being stripped of their charter right protections.
Yes, they are. 100%. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's the outcome. And you know, as more time goes on, one cannot help but feel frustrated. But we're not going to stop. And I think that that's what really bothers them the most, is that we're not going to stop. And so, yes, there's pressure from the top, but I appeal to everyone who's listening to apply pressure from the bottom. We need to come together and set aside our differences. I know there were earlier differences about, you know, COVID-19 vaccinations and mandates. We need to set that all aside and look at our fundamental values. Do we value a good police force, independent police force? Do we value freedom and peace? Do we value freedom of expression? Do we value human life in this country? Because if we do, let's stand together and hold the police to account, to run an investigation into why there was a tripling of sudden infant deaths. And we have to remember, the only reason why we know that there's a tripling of sudden infant deaths is because Helen Grus was charged with misconduct. You see, I am a person of faith, and I'd like to say God works in mysterious ways. This is an incredibly difficult struggle. But for the discreditable conduct charge, the public would have never known. They would have never known that there's been a tripling of sudden infant deaths in Ottawa after the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination, and that those babies died in circumstances similar or identical to the clinical records that were disclosed, the Pfizer clinical trial records. And so the evidence is there, and there's mounting evidence because there's, we don't know, there could be a lot more babies and infants that have tragically passed away. We don't know. The only reason why we know here is because Detective Helen Grus was charged.
You know, and it's bad that what happened to you, like, by all means. But I mean, I'm a Christian, and I believe that every time thing bad happens, God can bring a blessing out of it. Like, me and my daughter have been through horrendous situations, but because of this, we were able to go and start helping people as a result of it. And like you said, people would not have known this issue was there had this not happened. Should it have happened? Absolutely not. But it's happened, and now people are aware of it. And I think that this is something key, that people have to come together, because it's not necessarily whether you believe in the vaccine or not. That's not the issue. The issue is that our freedom is being taken away. If you cannot have enforcement for the laws, you have no country. This is the most basic thing, because the government is supposed to provide law and order. If you can't provide law and order, then what do you have? Like, I mean, might is right. We can't live that way. We have to have law and order and accountability. If there's no accountability, then you have no process, right? This is kind of where we're at. And so where is this thing going now with from these charges? Because you had
last March.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So tomorrow we have the final day of the penalty hearing, where the prosecution will say her reply. And then after that, we get a decision on the penalty. And the penalty that they're asking for is 24 months of demotion. And to the ordinary civilian, they might not understand what that actually means. They're like, oh, well, she's not going to jail or something. Well, this isn't a criminal charge. This is police misconduct. And police officers take their ranks very seriously. That's how they have different roles and responsibilities assigned. And attached to that is also, prestige and reward for all the sacrifice that police officers do for us to keep us safe on a daily basis, right? So they're asking for her to be demoted for a period of 2 years, which is incredibly draconic. When you look at other police officers that have been found guilty, criminally guilty, and have been found guilty of several counts of discreditable conduct, and they got, a week dock of pay or a year and a half of demotion. Helen Grus was looking into a troubling public safety issue, and they're asking for 2 years. And I believe the reason why they're asking for 2 years demotion is because they know that she is overdue promotion for sergeant. They want her to be sergeant. She's that good of an investigative police officer. They want her to be a sergeant. And sergeant in the police world means a role of leadership, a role of mentorship, a role of making the decisions, calling the shots, maybe opening up a criminal negligence investigation. They don't want her to be sergeant. She is due to retire soon. And so maybe they're hoping she'll just give up. And anyway, so that's where we're at. And then the way it works is that in terms of appeal, is that although she's been found guilty already last year, we have to wait until the penalty decision, and then we file the appeal. But the appeal goes to another administrative tribunal. Now, I've had it with administrative tribunals in Canada. There's no due process. There's a lack of procedural fairness. There's a lack of access to justice and accountability. Hearing officers or adjudicators, they don't have any legal training or background, and they don't have to adhere to any rules but their own. And it's an affront to natural justice here in Canada. And so then when you have to appeal to another administrative tribunal, they might just defer to the lower tribunal. And then by the time you get to court after that to do a judicial review in court, the court will give deference to the tribunals because they'll say, well, these tribunals, they're subject matter experts, so they know what they were doing. We're going to, we're just going to stand back. But there was this amazing case that came. I say it's amazing because Justice Cote is this incredible Supreme Court of Canada judge, and she in I believe it was the decision 2024 of July in York Regional teachers case. It was an arbitration case that went on for 10 years, and that basically solidified and said, it was talking about agents of government. If it acts as an agent, if it's private, it doesn't matter. It's still an agent of the government. And so, certain schools, if they breach charter rights, they can be held to account. So that was a decision that was, and that's Justice Cote's approach in her decisions, is that for government accountability, for fairness and rule of law. And so I'm hoping that we will see the same fruition, and hopefully it's not 10 years, but it's already been 4.5 years. So it could be that long.
Just right before we go to you, Helen, I just have to play a short commercial break, and then we'll hear what you have to say.
Perio, co-founder of Mark37.com. I spent my career in Silicon Valley working for high-tech infrastructure companies, and I've witnessed firsthand the surveillance apparatus they've built. Most of you already know we're in a digital war right now, but are you really aware that we're trying to fight this war with the weapons and tools of the enemy? That Android or iPhone in your pocket, that MacBook or Windows laptop, it's a tracking device feeding everything you say and do to companies that want you under their control or eliminated entirely. Every text, call, location, even how long you pause on a post, they track it all and use complex algorithms to then use this data to manipulate your behavior. If you knew someone hacked your devices and was selling your data without your consent, you'd be furious and terrified. So why are you okay with these companies doing this to you right now? Here's what they don't want you to know. There is another way. At Mark37.com, we offer phones, laptops, tablets, and even basic flip phones, all running systems big tech can't access unless you explicitly give them access. And what's even better is you also don't need to sacrifice productivity. I'm one of thousands of geeks mobilized across this country, building tools and providing education and support to help you live anonymously online before they enforce digital ID. Go to mark37.com. Sign up for a free 30-minute digital privacy consultation. Join hundreds of thousands who have decided to stop feeding their data to companies actively working to enslave us. Take back your communications. Take back your data. And may God bless you on your journey.
Sorry, I'm having tech issues. I can't hear you at all. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you either. Sorry, I thought it was.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to you. I forgot to turn my mic back on. I do that sometimes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was having another glitch here.
All right.
Okay.
So what did you ask? I'm sorry.
No, just kind of with the upcoming the hearing, because you have your final day tomorrow, right? And just kind of give us a little bit on your take on what's going on with you with that.
As I said, the whole process has been surreal. So quite often I don't know what to expect anymore. So I'm thinking sometime within a month or two, hopefully a sentence will actually be rendered. And then we'll start with the appeal. And as Bath Sheba said, I'm in for the long haul. I did not expect the tribunal to take this long. I may hold the record for the longest police tribunal ever. I'd have to do a little bit more inquiries about that, but it's been 4.5 years. So if it's going to take another 5 to 10 years, I'm ready to go.
Yes. And I'll comment a bit about the judicial system. I learned more about the court system in the last 6 years than I have in the previous 45 years of my life. And so what I realize is that the courts and even the government is not operating the way it should. It's not, right? You're having a lot of, we're overlooking too many things. Like when I was a kid or when I was in my, 20s and so forth, what we're seeing now was completely unimaginable. I would have never expected this in my entire life, but yet here we are. Like I would never think that people would be getting punished for doing their jobs, because you as a police officer, you see how many doctors, I got punished for doing my job, right? And so forth. This is unsustainable. But you mentioned Bath Sheba, the time. You said that this could take 10 years. This can't wait 10 years. Because if people are hesitant to come forward for 10 years, because what happens is it takes 10 years and you finally get a victory. Then what? I get it, you win. What about now?
Well, the 10 years is the timeline for how long it takes in the legal process. But as we know, and what I certainly feel is that the law is being used to hurt us, and we're seeing a lot of changes, right? As you said, unimaginable. Like it's unimaginable. When bills C-34, C-9, and C-22 become law in Canada, I can't even imagine what that's going to look like for our freedoms here. What that's going to look like. I don't. It's going to be a very dark place here, and it's going to be something that no visionary wrote about. It's going beyond Orwell. It's going beyond Huxley. It's going beyond Handmaid's Tale. It's as I say, it's a crisis. We're in a crisis of humanity here. We need our humanity is under attack. And when I took on this case and throughout this case, the message that I keep close to my heart is I'm fighting this for humanity. And I have to remind myself that, because it's easy to go down a dark path and be angry and feel upset and having dark thoughts. It's important to be compassionate and loving and spread the light and hopefully that will inflame others to rise up together. I believe in the human spirit. I believe in humanity, that we can come together and rise above this. And so it's with great thanks to Todd Harris from Matador Films, who last year felt inspired to do a documentary about Detective Helen Grus. So there's a documentary that just been completed at the end of April called Silencing Detective Grus, and an organization called the Grus Justice Project has taken it upon themselves to facilitate screenings across the world. We've got Croatia, Australia. I'm going down to the United States to Colorado and hopefully Montana, Wyoming, Idaho at the end of August to screen Silencing Detective Grus. We're going to have it rolled out in Alberta very soon, and it's also going to be accessible by online. And this documentary not only tells the story of what happened to Detective Grus, to what she was looking into, it also interviews former CBC journalists and professionals that tell the story of the greater corruption, the greater collapse we have of what we thought was good governance no longer exists. We do not have that concept anymore of that contract, that social contract where the government is there to help us and protect us.
Yes. Is there any information like of the evidence that they put out on the tribunal? Is that in public record?
So the entire tribunal is public record, and if people want copies of the exhibits, they would have to get in contact with media@ottawapolice.ca. So yeah, it's all public record.
Yes, because I actually want to look at this, because I look at what's going on and I don't like what's happening. And when we have an issue with the process of how things go, that's not a legal issue. It's a political issue, because the legal system can't fix itself. It's set up by the legislative branch. And when I began to start doing, like, for example, the petitions that we're talking about, I've been looking at like the people who were founding, even like obviously the American system, but I looked at what they did in Commonwealth countries as they were setting them up, and they pretty much were on the same line of thinking in a lot of cases as were the founding fathers. And they all understood the way that the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branches were working, because they all got that ideas from the British system. And the judicial branch is only supposed to put judgment. The legislative branch is the will, and the executive is the sword. And the legislative is literally the hand that holds the sword. And so when you're having processes like this, where they're weaponizing the law against people, when it should be there to protect the innocent people and punish the evildoer, that's a political question that needs to get dealt with. And that's one of the reasons why we brought that forward. So, what do you think the outcome of this is going to be? What are your hopes for it? What do you think is going to happen?
I'm going to speak first here. What I believe is that through the legal process, that we will see justice. And there's just too many errors of law, errors of fact. It's a court cannot turn that down. I mean, it's going to win on appeal. But what fundamentally needs to be done, and I do believe that will take place, is there needs to be criminal investigation initiated. But for that, we need to change our entire governance, because we have doctors, pathologists, and coroners in Canada that have been silenced, and they're the missing piece of the puzzle in terms of finding the evidence, right? And working together with the police in the criminal investigation. So there needs to be a kind of a composition of some kind of expert panel of police officers, medical professionals, and other experts that would come together. But at the moment, there are all those professions that are being silent. And what I believe is that this documentary, because the power of art should not be underestimated. Art is beautiful. And if you think about the way we're living right now, we don't really have much time for art. And we're also busy with our lives, and art is creation. It's when you talk to any artist, it's as if they have this inspiration from a higher source to send a message, and it's a message that can be communicated and heard and it transcends any political oppression, any legal weaponization of our rules. It will touch the hearts and lives of people, and people will come together. And so the documentary has just been rolled out, and I can already see a change. That there is going to be a global shift. That's what I fundamentally believe. And people are working in the background on collecting evidence. We have Natasha Gonek, who put together an affidavit actually for us, which the tribunal, of course, excluded from evidence. And she's been working with a team across the country, gaining access through information requests from the government. And she has records that state that the government knew that there was an increase in miscarriages, that there were babies and children that died after the COVID-19 vaccination, and that they still carried onward and upward with mandating the COVID-19 vaccination. You got to remember at the convoy time, some people forget this, but at the height of the protests there in February 2022, Trudeau was pushing out on Twitter at that time for children to get vaccinated. And he knew that children had died after taking that COVID-19 vaccine. And that's the evidence that's being gathered right now. And I believe it's all going to come together, but we need the will of the people. We need compassion, forgiveness, and love and resilience.
I agree that needs to be done. One thing that I want to mention that most people are not aware of in this. When I looked at the pandemic response, and I looked at it in Canada, I looked at it in the United States, I looked at it in Europe, I looked at it in the UK, I looked at it in France, and I was looking at all over the place. They all did the same thing. And if you go to the hierarchy controls, you have elimination, substitution, and engineering controls, administrative, and PPE. They all left off engineering controls completely. Every single one. That's not by chance. And when you start seeing, like you say, the numbers, and then when you look at them, they did the masking, they did everything that they did, all the way up to the vaccines. There's a lot of things that led up to the vaccines that were wrong that would definitely exclude the vaccines right off the bat, where it should be investigated criminally. I agree 100%. Sorry, over to you, Helen.
Yeah, and that's something that I the first time that really came up was May the 12th, 2022, when I presented that to the police professional standards unit, where I said, with what I've learned to date now, there should be a criminal investigation. That was reiterated during my testimony at the tribunal as well. But during that tribunal, I was also silenced a lot. There were many objections. The hearing officer also told me to not talk about certain things. He'd stopped me in the midst of my testimony. So it is going to be a challenge moving forward, but the evidence is on the record. You cannot erase that at this time. And moving forward, as Bath Sheba said, and I think the biggest thing is people do need to speak up. There's still people out in Canada that feel they're alone and isolated from everybody else. But the power of speaking up, of communicating with each other, and it wasn't until I spoke up that I realized I was not alone going through some of the various like during the measures that were being implemented on society, on humanity. So when I spoke up and said, something's off, and I sent an email to our entire organization, and I learned I was not alone. And that gives people strength when they speak up, and then people connect, and it's strength in numbers, right? And that happened during the convoy. It happened for many, even the protests that do happen. It's strength in numbers, where if you come together peacefully and lawfully, we can do great things.
I agree. I think the law affords a lot of things for people to do. People just have to, sometimes think a little bit out of the box, because the law gives you a lot of latitude. You're free to do what you want as long as you don't break it. And so as long as you're within those confines, I think that people need to be persistent in their efforts. And I think a lot of it is especially with the elected officials, because they have the power to make the changes that are necessary to make sure that things operate within the confines of the law, and especially under the charter. Because I mean, when I'm listening to what was going on, all I'm hearing is a ton of charter violations going on, and people are being prevented from getting the remedy that they need, or the help that they need, or the justice they need, and so forth. And that's not supposed to happen, right? At all. So I know that we're running up here on time. So can we get some final thoughts on what do you want to say to people? We'll start with you, Bath Sheba, and then with you, Helen.
Well, just to echo what Helen was saying earlier, is that we need more people to speak up. But I would add and urge that people really need to stand up, use their feet, and to walk with us. Because a lot of us who've been standing up, we're tired. I mean, we're resilient, but we're tired. And there is a power in numbers. And I know that what they're doing, as in, the crackdown, the Emergencies Act invocation, and now this Bill C9, 22, and 34, it's going to harm our freedom of expression. It's going to scare and terrify people. And I would ask people that instead of feeling scared and threatened, to know that if you don't sacrifice your comfort today and your pleasures of today, you will not have what you have today in the future. It's going to be gone, and there's no way of getting it back. There will be a tremendous amount of suffering awaiting for all of us if we do not stand up now. There are people dying. There are people that are hurt. And Detective Helen Grus has sacrificed a lot. She has sacrificed so much. She's a mother of 3 children, right? She's a community member. She's not just a police officer, and she's sacrificed a lot. Her family has suffered a lot financially as well. And if she can do it and is willing to fight for all of us, we should stand with her and fight with her.
I agree. We all need to stand up, and we should stand behind the people that are standing up for the people. When we're done here, just you guys can just hang out for a minute, because I have something that can help, and we can discuss it after. And Helen, if you can, just your final thoughts.
I think what's actually quite significant, the week of September 8th, many people have now heard of the Allison inquiry MP Dean Allison brought forward. And that's actually going to be giving victims of who have been injured by the COVID vaccines a chance, an opportunity to speak up and be heard about what happened to them. So many people have been turned away, ignored, and actually mocked and ridiculed. They brought up the fact that they were injured shortly after getting these shots. So I do, on an ending note, please, for people to be aware of that and speak up. That's a beautiful opportunity for everybody and anybody that feels that they've been abandoned. There are people like MPD Nelson bringing that forward, so that you have an opportunity to be heard. And I'll just wish everybody, I'm so grateful for the people that are supporting me and praying for me. Prayers are powerful. And thank you for having us on your show.
All right. I'm going to close with a prayer, and then I'll give my daughter her thoughts. She'll weigh in on the matter. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace and your mercy and all the things that you have done for us. And Father, I ask of you this day to watch over Helen and the work that she's doing, and help this situation to be resolved in a way that is pleasing to you, and that it would help all the people around, and help the men and the women to come together, that we can rebuild our families, our churches, our community, our nation, and that we can deal with this situation and have some protection for the children and a future for them, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Thanks, Dad, for the prayers. Always, thank you, Helen and Bath Sheba, for joining us. I really appreciate everything that you're doing to help people and your courage. I think everyone should definitely stand behind what you're doing. And I'm at my limit and my capacity with hearing stuff like this. Quite frankly, I agree with Bath Sheba saying that a lot of people are very tired, and people who've been in the fight doing this. And unfortunately, I think when we see this so often, we see so much more women in these positions doing this. And it's I think until the men in the country really stand up and join with the women that are doing this, and have the courage to go forward and do this. Like there's the Coots boys, we know about them, but I mean, like, on average, I feel like the average civilian needs to take more stock in what's going on and see it as more of a personal issue to them as well, because like Bath Sheba said, our protections, our charter protections are being completely revoked and rescinded or violated. It's at the point where we actually have privileges, we don't really have rights. And so like people need to understand that they are trying to make, well, they're not trying, they are making an example of people like Helen and anyone who's doing stuff like this. And it's, you do it to one person, you're doing it to everybody at the end of the day, and it's not going to stop. And like my dad said, we don't really have 10 years. They do the best they can through the legal system to draw these things out for an extended period of time so they can continue to do acts, egregious acts along the way, and discourage people. And how many people will give up, like Bathsheba said, how many, like, especially if they're close to retirement, or maybe they don't have as much family, or maybe they don't have the money or the health to continue to go through this. So we really need to be supporting each other and taking these things very seriously, because if every single person waits 10 years to deal with what's going on here, we're not really going to have a country left at all. So we really need to be supporting. What are you doing? So yeah, I would just encourage everybody to continue to support people like Helena and Bathsheba. I really respect you for what you're doing. It's not it's not an easy task. I especially know from the work that my father and I are doing. So I really commend you, and God bless you guys, and may He be with you in your procedures tomorrow. I'll be praying for you in that, and I hope all the listeners will too. So, yeah, put them up in prayer, and definitely go out and support them any way that you can, and the people in your community that are doing the same thing, and get involved. But thank you guys for joining. We hope to have you guys in the future and have positive updates. Good luck in your work in the United States, Bathsheba. I'm sure it will go well, and God will be with you. And thank you everyone for listening. Please share this. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, and we will. Ciao.